Hi, we are on page 31b, and tonight we're going to do what they like to call nowadays a deep dive into the world of Kitute Mechtat Shiure and the world of a Lulav Shel Ashera Shel Ir Hanidacha. We're going to review a few lines of Gemara, and what I want to try to do in order to get ourselves oriented is to see two other places in Shas that deal with the same subject. Now, we're not going to go as much in depth to this subject as we did with regard to mitzvah avera and Baal Tosif, so it's not going to be like 8 weeks of it. But this week, I want to see some things inside and sort of show you some of the sites, and you'll probably be able to apply some of the concepts that we learned earlier, and you'll see what I mean shortly. Let's get underway. Lamed Aleph Amud Bet. Last shir was mostly dominated by a skira, an overview, sort of flying through in a wave runner just to see everything on the surface. Now we're dropping anchor in one particular spot. We will not go to crushing depths, I hope. I'm on 31b at the beginning of what we saw last time, a quotation from the Mishnah that mentioned among the different kinds of lulavim that are not kosher, the lulav of Ashera and the lulav of Ir Hanidachat. Ashera, a particular type of tree that was worshipped. Ir Hanidachat, a city slated for destruction, described in Parshat Re'eh as well, owing to rampant idolatrous practice that transpired therein. Those are forbidden. The lulavim from those two categories are forbidden for use. So that's 3, 4, 5 lines up from the bottom on 31b toward the end of the line. The quotation from the Mishnah, Shel Ashera Shir Lior Hanidachat. Everybody with me? We're ready? Let's go. Shel Ashera Pasul. That seems fairly obvious that it's pasul, but is it really true? Question mark. Va'amar Rava, don't we have a statement from Rava where very strangely Rava declares Lulav Shel Avoda Zara lo yitol ve'im natal kasher. You're not allowed to use, you should not take a lulav of idolatry, but if you did, well, it's okay, which is strange. Now, we have two ideas in Rashi about what a lulav shel avodah zara is. Either that it was used to beautify avodah zara. Judah, thank you last time, clarified for us. Lechabed here was itself the sweeping, but I meant in the sense of you're adorning it because you're fixing it up. So you used it in the service of the idolatry, or the way that it's worshipped is using the lulav. We worship God using a lulav, we're waving it, and we're shaking it, and we're picking it up. So the Avodah Zara, lahavdol fe'avdalot, is worshipped by the throwing of it onto it, the waving it in front of it. Those are the two possibilities that are mentioned in terms of what Rava has to say. Now, why is this important? Because it turns out there's a third category, not where you're using the object to beautify or fix up the idol, not where you're using the object as the religious vehicle in order to worship the idol, but where it is the idol. That's an Asherah tree. And that's the third category. So therefore, the Gemara clarifies, is an Asherah tree really possible? Rava says a lulav of Avodah Zara shall not be taken, but if you did, that's kosher. The Gemara clarifies, no. Hacha ba'Asherah de Moshe askinan. We're talking here about an Asherah de Moshe, meaning the Asherah tree mentioned in Parshat Re'eh as slated for destruction. And in that instance, that type of tree, meaning the tree itself, is the object of idolatry, the kitute mechtat shiure. Something slated for destruction loses its existence from a halachic perspective. It no longer, it physically exists, but halachically, it doesn't take up any space, meaning it's not long enough to be used as a lulav. You can hold it in your hand and wave it. Yeah, that's true, but that's immaterial. Because from a halachic vantage point, it's been cut down to size. It is as if it does not have an existence anymore. It's been ground up, proverbially. Since it's going to be burned, it's like it's already burned. Daikanami de katane dumya de irani dachat shmamina. And also look at the juxtaposition in the Mishnah of two features. We have Shel Ashera, Shel irani dachat. Shel irani dachat, that definitionally means the whole thing's going to be incinerated. That's what the irani dachat is slated for. So too, it's true with regard to the Asherah. Why are they juxtaposed? The Gemara says, reason number 2 is to tell you they're on the same plane. They are the same thing. It's like they're already destroyed. That's the extent of the Gemara we're looking at in Masechet Sukkah. That's it for tonight. We're dropping anchor on this to try to understand this a little bit better and in various other contexts. What I'm building towards, and it is a high goal, is to be able to learn the Tosfot that looks short at the bottom of 31b, but if you turn to 32a, you'll note it's rather long. You cannot climb this mountain without seeing the basic building blocks that you'll need in order to scale it. It's a non-starter. There are too many other references, yeah? So what I'm putting on the screen in front of you is the first of 2 building blocks. We won't even get to Tosfot tonight, by the way, because what my plan is to see the Gemara here. The Gemara here we saw, check. The Gemara now I'm putting on the screen in Masechet Avoda Zara. Then we're going to see a Gemara in Masechet Chulin, and then, if there's time, we'll see the Ritva, and if there's time, the Shulchan Aruch. Actually, maybe we'll skip to the Shulchan Aruch after we do these 2 Gemaras, so you see sort of the end result, which will seem surprising, but based on what we're learning now, perhaps will make more sense. And then to see the Ritva. We won't even get to not Tosfot and not the Shita of the Rambam, but I still think the journey will be well worth it. And here we go. The Gemara Masechet Avoda Zara centers on the question of idolatry. Obvious. So the question is asked, always in the middle of discussion, as follows. It's over here. Boy Reish Lakish. I think I have a highlighter on this thing. I'm going to try to use it. Let's see if I can do this. Here we go, for as long as it'll last. Where am I? Starting here. Okay? Boy Reish Lakish. It didn't work. Hamishtachave ledekel. Lulav umahu. Oh, there you go. If you bow down to a tree, a fellow bows down to a date palm. So can you use the lulav from that date palm? Now the date palm is attached to the ground. Okay. Ma'u mitzvah. Sorry. Okay. So it can be used now for a mitzvah. That's the basic question in front of us. Why should we care? We have a principle that if something is attached to the ground, normally we maintain that objects that are still naturally attached to the ground, no matter who worships them, they still don't attain the status of Avoda Zara. Someone bows down to a mountain, the mountain is not Avoda Zara now, or trees or whatever it is, as long as it's attached to the ground. Problem is when it's detached. Here it was attached. You want to go and cut it off, and you want to use it, right? So the question is, are you allowed to? 3-way machloket. The Rabbanan hold that it can't be an object of Avoda Zara, but there are others who disagree and think that it can be. We'll see one of those examples right now. So the Gemara says, well, this case happens to be, the plot thickens, Be'ilan shenatu mitchila lekach, lo tiba ilach. Nobody's asking with regard to a tree that was initially planted with the express purpose of being worshipped. If that's what happened, then that's definitely not good. Nobody would think that's kosher. The question is, what if it actually was not for that purpose? That was the express purpose. So don't even bother asking. There's nothing that goes without saying. That's also prohibited, even for general use, because it was put into the ground with that intention, as opposed to an object that grew. A date palm grows, and a guy bows down to it. So this is our God, bowing down to it. It was already planted, existed there. That, according to Rabbanan, it's Teflon. That doesn't stick. But if you put the sapling in, you said, this is Avoda Zara, and now that's also forbidden. Kiti bailach be'ilan shenato ulevasov avado. Right? So the question really is, where is there actually a question? With a tree that was planted, and afterward people came to worship it. Yeah? Now I'm botching it here. Never mind. Okay. So Valiba de Rabbi Yossi, everyone sees where I'm pointing? Can you see it on your screen? Where I'm pointing? Yeah, okay. Then it's fine. I don't have to keep highlighting. Valiba de Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Loti Bailach, Dafil Lahedjot Nami Aser. If you follow not Rabbanan's opinion, back on whatever it was, Memhe, but you follow Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, then there's no question here. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says a tree which was planted, generic, and later was worshipped, does get the status of Avoda Zara, and even for common purposes, it will be forbidden. So, Kiti Bailach, where is it really a Shaila with the Shita of Rabbanan? le'inyan mitzvah mai. What would we say with regard to using it for a mitzvah? In other words, the Rabbanan hold that if there is a tree that was planted in the ground as a sapling, generically, then it starts to grow, then people come and they bow down to it. So now they agree that if you cut off the lulavim, you could use them to put a roof on your deck, not your sukkah, on your deck. You could use it to I don't know what, to make clothing out of. I don't know. Okay, but the question is, what about for a mitzvah? And the Gemara asks, "My mi ma'is klapi gavoa olo." Do we say that now it's true you could use it for common uses, but you're going to put that into a mitzvah now, or is that really disgusting? Is it repulsive? Now, notice repulsive doesn't mean forbidden. Repulsive just means, as we would say back in the Maturnisht, it's a pasnisht. It's not appropriate to do this, right? That's what the Gemara says. Now, the Gemara goes on. Ki ata Rav Dimi Amar ba'ashera shebitla kamabayale. I'll just tell you what these words mean, but I won't define them right now. When Rav Dimi showed up, he said that the case here was about an ashera that was mivutal, that bittul was done on it, and that's where the case is coming up. And it's really a case that's going back and forth about the question of whether there's dichui eitzel mitzvot or not. So the point is, once it was unable to be used temporarily because someone had worshipped it as an idol, again, it started neutral, it became idolatrous. Now the person nullified it. What is nullified? It means the non-Jewish person did something to signify that this object is really not Avoda Zara. They did something to denigrate it. They broke a piece off of it. They said, this is not really Avoda Zara. It's all fake. So if they did that, has that pushed away the mitzvah forever? Or now it's a generic object that can be used. And that he thinks that's really the discussion going. Ki ata Rav Dimi Amar, right? Ba'ashera shebitla kama boile, right? And the question is, yesh dichul etzel mitzvah or ein dichul etzel mitzvah? Is there an idea that things are pushed off permanently, or that they're only temporarily suspended when they're forbidden to be used, but then they come back online after the fact? If there's no dichul etzel mitzvah, it means that it would be permissible now to use for a mitzvah purpose. And there's a whole discussion that goes on here. But what we see here is that what began as a question of someone bowing down to a tree, the Gemara has clarified is really the case where it was planted for neutral purposes and became an object of idolatry. It's not irrevocable or indelible because it could actually be, what's it called? Mivutal. It could be made, there could be bittul done on it. It's possible. The question is, even according to the Rabbanan who hold that this doesn't have any impact, the object was attached to the ground, it was planted for a neutral purpose. Now someone showed up and decided to announce they would like to use it for idolatry. So what? Nothing changed. Okay, but now you cut it off the tree after they left. Is it appropriate to use for a mitzvah? Or is it what's called ma'is, a new category we learn here? Where am I? Here, right? In a mitzvah, mi ma'is klapi gavoa olo. Is it repulsive when to use it in the service of Hashem or not? Yeah. So look at Tosfot with me here on this page. Can't see everything, but at least this Tosfot. Reish Lakish should ask the original question on the top here by Reish Lakish. And we have here the following. Reish Lakish itle shapir de Rava. Reish Lakish must hold like Rava does. Where? The Gemara we learned tonight. The Lulav shel avodat kochavim lo yitol, v'im natal yatsa. Don't take a lulav of Avoda Zara, but if you did, you'll still be yotze. I see there's two questions, but I can't check them now. Give me 1 second. Let me just finish this. Dahata Mairi Kodem Bittel. Because over there, in the Gemara Masechet Sukka, we're talking about an object that in and of itself did not have bittul done to it. It is actually some kind of an object that is used for Avoda Zara. Ubidi Eved Yatsa. And yet you would be Yotze. Do you know why you would be Yotze, even though it's actually an object of Avoda Zara? The mitzvah lo lehanut nitnu. The mitzvah were not given for our personal enjoyment. And since they're not given for our personal enjoyment, there's no sanction on using an object that otherwise is an object that would have been used for idolatry, because we're not using it for our purpose. We're using the service of Hashem of Al-Hacha. But in this case, Mayri Achar Bittul, we're actually talking about a case here after Bittul is taking place, after the nullification. Uboy, and the question is, Mi Mais Lechatchila Olo. The question here, and that's why the language is what it is Ma Inyan Mitzvah Mai. Mi Mais Klapi Gavoa Olo. Now that Bittul has been done on it, is it still Lechatchila not right to use it because it's really repulsive? Tosfot here points out, therefore, to summarize, that Reish Lakish, who asked this initial question, if someone bowed down to a tree, what happens to the lulav when it comes to you using it for a mitzvah? The Gemara clarified what was the case. The case was the case of the Shita of the Rabbanan, and their question really was with regard to a mitzvah. Is it disgusting or is it permissible? Tosfot here say, well, Reish Lakish actually must hold, just like Rava, that actually, even if it was of Avodat Kochavim, technically, you're not allowed, you shouldn't do it. You would be Yotze. You know why? Because it's before Bittul. It's before there's any nullification. Yet you would be Yotze. Why? Because of this. Ubediyavad Yatza. Why B'diyavad Yatza? Because mitzvah were not given for our personal enjoyment. But what's the case that Reish Lakish therefore is really asking about? Where you could remove the taint of Avodah Zara. How? Bittul. Not you. The non-Jew has to do something to their Avodah Zara. By the by, for all intents and purposes, a Jew who owns Avodah Zara, it can never be nullified. A Jew's Avodah Zara can never be nullified. It has to be destroyed. Nothing else to do with it. But a non-Jew's Avodah Zara could be nullified. By whom? By the non-Jew. So that's Tosfot say that's the question that's going on here. That's specifically the frame of reference that Reish Lakish is using, because actually Reish Lakish must hold like Rava that actually had it been Avodah Zara, everyone agrees. If you took one of Avodah Zara, you shouldn't do it, but if you did, you would be Yotze. Why? Because B'diyavad Yotze. Why? Because, sorry, I finished my sentence. Mitzvot were not given for our personal enjoyment; they were given to serve Hashem. Okay, now, excellent question. Someone wrote in, I think wrote it directly to me, so I'll keep it anonymous. Whether or not that would be true for animals of korbanot, if they're used for idol worship, are they possible for the mitzvah like korbanot? That's an excellent question. The short answer is it would not necessarily be the same with regard to animals. And that's part of actually the discussion that's going on these very pages. I don't think it's too far afield into the world of Avodah Zara, but your second question is exactly on the point. What about a shofar that came from an animal that people worshipped? So there's a ram that has horns, but the horns are part of the animal. People are bowing down to this object, and now you wanna use it for the purpose of shofar. That's the question. That's the one that we can deal with tonight, because the one with animals and korbanot, that's like another layer of this. I don't see how I'm going to get that far. So I'll deal with the shofar question for now. Okay, good. Let's look at it inside. So this was Gemara number 1. Slide number 1. We just finished learning the section we need from the Gemara Masechet Avodah Zara, page 47a, on the question of people who bow down to trees. And here Tosfot referenced our Gemara in order to understand this Gemara. As you know already from dealing with this for a while, I don't think there's any beginners on this call. Everything is interwoven and interlaced. So it's a matrix. Everything is connected to everything else. So this presupposes that you know our Gemara. So Tosfot tells you, oh, did you learn the Gemara in Sukka? Well, we can say proudly, we did. So we know what this dialogue is. And Tosfot is refining our understanding of this question of Reish Lakish, Reish Lamed, Reish Lakish, that it really is a question of, after Bittul, you could do it, but is it disgusting or not? And that's these words. Mimais, I can't get it straight. Mimais klapi gavoa olo. Okay? That's the question. Let's go to the next Gemara, the next slide. This is the Gemara now in Masechet Chulin, page 89a. The Gemara in Chulin we'll see on the bottom of the page. Again, it's always the middle of a discussion. It's kind of picking it up in the middle, but What choice do I really have? Amar Rabbi Ze'era. I'll do the same thing with the highlighting. Not that it served me so well, but we'll try. Amar Rabbi Ze'era. V'itema Rabba bar Rav Yirmiyah. Can everyone see? We're good? Hope it's big enough. Yeah? Yes? Everyone's screen good? Yep. I don't want to box anybody out. Amar Rabbi Ze'era. V'itema Rabba bar Yirmiyah. Mechasin ba'afar ir hanidachat. So it's presupposing you know 5 things already. There's a mitzvah of kisui hadam when we shecht an animal, particularly an oaf or a chaya, not a behemoth, not cows, but a sheep, fowl.
It's in Gemara Beitza.
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful. Right at the beginning of Masechta, in fact, you have to cover the blood with some dirt, take some earth and cover it. It's the mitzvah of kisui hadam. Question is, what about the earth that comes from a city that's slated for destruction because the whole city worshipped idols, etc.? Again, this case that's very hard to even wrap your head around. How exactly did that unfold? But that is what the Torah describes. It's an ir hanidachat. We talked about this already a few times. Can you use the earth from the ir hanidachat in order to actually be engaged in the mitzvah of kisui hadam? Jeff, I ignored you before. I'm sorry. Apologies. You still have a question?
I guess it's still just because of clarification in terms of
please, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand before.
In terms of the Asherah tree, it talks about it from being like Asherah de Moshe. Is that from one that existed at the time, or one that served the same purpose as Asherah trees from back then?
The Asherah de Moshe would be, let's say, and we'll see. Actually, we're going to drill down between Asherah de Moshe and Asherah generally. Asherah de Moshe it's one of the trees that was found in the land of Israel when the Jewish people arrived. That was an Asherah tree. And the assumption was they were all used for Avoda Zara. Now they became the possession of the Jewish people. Now there was no possibility for bittul. They all had to be destroyed.
Okay, and they were planted specifically for that?
Yeah, exactly. Now the question would be, what about an Asherah tree generally? That we actually have not covered yet.
Okay.
Because let's say there was an Asherah tree that was not planted for that purpose. Do we have like a war against Asherah trees? No, but the assumption is in Canaan land, when the Jewish people, the Israelites, entered Canaan. So the ancient peoples there, this was their idolatry. You know, you saw it. It's like, oh, that's what it's doing here. It wasn't just for decor. Yeah, I don't know that it means necessarily an Asherah tree would be off limits at all times, in all places, in all cultures. But for that, that's the assumption. Yeah. Okay.
Asherah, the name Asherah is after a goddess.
Yeah.
Is there another name for Asherah tree?
In history
or in English?
I'm really not sure. I wish I could tell you.
But by definition, if it's named after a goddess, it would be a tree for Avoda Zara. No? So how could it be a regular?
Yeah, I guess. Because like many other things, right? You could have a species of something that at a certain moment in history is actually no longer related to its idolatrous purpose.
Okay.
I don't know. There's a planet called Venus, but I don't think anyone bows down to it.
Right. I got it.
Not that anybody ever bowed down to it necessarily, but it was named for something in a mythology, that at some point people did worship in some way, represented then, and ascribed to. So, but we'll get to it. Let's one step at a time. Let's go back to
the maybe there is always a relationship to what they call Etz Ra'anan. But it's non-specific.
I don't think you could say, they use the expression called Eitz Ra'anan, but I don't know. Again, I don't know that's. I'm not sure what to say. I mean, you can't say that every Eitz Ra'anan equals idolatry. It's not true.
Maybe there were Asherot, but they were totally destroyed, so that none of them left.
Choliot. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know what happened in the end with them. Let's keep going in the Gemara and see what we're up to now with Kisui Adam, and we'll table the discussion about Asher. We're going to come back to it when we get back to the Gemara on Lamed Aleph, Amud Bet. Okay, look, Rabbi Zera, and some say it's Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah, Mechasin ba'afar ir hanidachat. We cover using the offer of an ir hanidachat. The Gemara recoils. V'amai isurei hanahu. Isn't it? Can you all hear me still?
Yeah.
Okay, somehow my computer started beeping at me. I don't know. V'amai isurei hanahu. It's isn't it forbidden to be involved with this? It's an isur hana. So Amar Zeire, don't get confused. There's Rabbi Zeira and Zeire. So Zeire responded, Lo nitzcha ela le'afar afara. Dichtiv ve'et kol shla tikbots el toch rechova v'sarafta. Misha'ena mechutzer ela kavitza usreifa. Yatzezesh mechutzer tlisha kavitza usreifa. That was a mouthful, which basically amounted to, no, the earth or the dirt that is found at Irni Dachat that doesn't count. The prohibition on deriving benefit from the Irni Dachat, Zeiri says that no, that does not pertain to the dirt of the dirt. You know why? The dirt of the dirt is a way of saying the hard packed dirt, because it says in the Torah specifically, gather together all of its spoils to the street and burn it. But that which is not lacking other than two things, gathering and burning. But anything that you also is mechusser tlisha, because it's attached to the ground. It's buried in the ground. It's earth itself, the hard packed dirt. So that is something that is not subject to the Isser Hana. Ergo, you're taking a stick, and Ira mentioned it before, Gemara Beitza. You take a stick and you flick up some earth from the ground. You can take a shovel, and it's going to go on top of a little bit of the blood. Done. Yod design. Even with the alfar of an irani dachat, because after all, when you burn an irani dachat, apparently you don't have to dig up, a foot of dirt of the ground, because it's the ground. It's only the objects that all you need to do is gather together. Rava disagrees. Rava Amar, this really should be highlighted, and I don't say that often. Rava Amar mitzvot lav. This is the source. Rava Amar mitzvot lav lehanot nitnu. Rava says mitzvot are not given for the purpose of personal enjoyment. Hold the press right there. Go down to your Gemara now of Gemara Sukka. Look at 31b and look again 4 lines up from the bottom. The Gemara had asked the Shel apostle, the Amar Rava, didn't Rava say, Lulav Shel Avoda Zara lo yitol, v'im natal kosher. Don't take it, but if you did, it's still kosher. Look at Rashi on 31b, our Gemara in Masachet Sukkah. Lo yitol, why shouldn't you take it? Look at Rashi says, Demais lagavoa, 2 words. Where did Rashi get those words? Demais lagavoa, repulsive, repugnant, disgusting, atrocious, to give on high. The Gemara in Avoda Zara, page 47a. He took those words. That's the language. Now the next Rashi. But if you did take it, you shouldn't take it. But if you took a lulav of Avoda Zara, again, for Rashi, a lulav of Avoda Zara, just to clarify, is not that people bow down to the lulav. It's that they use the lulav to sweep, to fix, to beautify, or that it was actually the object through which they worship the idol. But it's not the idol itself. Remember that for Rashi, okay? V'im natal, but if you took it kosher, says Rashi, v'afagav de asire hanahu, even though this object, though it is only, quote unquote, only, I mean, it's pretty bad, only mishamesh avoda zara, or it's part of the avoda of the Avoda Zara, an instrument of avoda, and therefore it's prohibited to have any benefit from it. What does Rashi say? The mitzvot lav lehanot nitnu. The mitzvot, however, were not given for our personal enjoyment. Klomar, meaning, ein kiyum mitzvot hanaat haguf ela avodat eved lerabo. The fulfillment of mitzvot is not for the purpose of benefiting one's body. It's not for pleasure, but rather it is the service of a servant to their master. That's what mitzvahs are, right? Ergo, even though this object is forbidden for you to use for your benefit, and even though the truth is a lo yafeh, but if you did it, you are yotzei, because mitzvah lav lehanot nitnu. Now, how did Rashi know?
In other words, you're saying that the getting the reward of a mitzvah is not considered hana. Is that what you're saying?
Wait. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you're going to wait. I don't think I heard you. What did you say? Getting hana? What? Say it again. I just didn't hear you correctly.
You're saying getting the fulfillment of a mitzvah is not considered hana. That's what you're saying.
Nachon. That's correct. That is what I'm saying. Now, where did Rava? No, excuse me. I gave it away. Where did Rashi come up with the idea that he was going to tell us in this little few lines that, by the way, I know for sure that this is Rava's opinion, that Rava holds mitzvot lav lechanot nitnu, and therefore, if you had the Lulav, Shel, Avoda, Zara, lo yitol, v'im natal, kasher, where did he get the first part of what he said we saw? Was the Gemara Avoda Zara, page 47a. Where did he get mitzvot lav lechanot nitnu? Rava said it. Where? In the Gemara in Chulin, right on your screen. 89a. I highlighted it right down here. Rava says mitzvot lav lechanot nitnu. Everyone with me? We're going to the next slide. But you understand what just happened, the mechanics here? I just tried to show you, how did Rashi come up with these expressions and these explanations? Now, obviously, Rashi didn't make them up out of whole cloth. Rashi has his Rebbeim. We talked about this before, but it's important and instructive to always keep this in mind. The Kuntris, the notebook, is Rashi's notebook that he has from his Shiurim, from his Rebbeim that he learned with in Vermaiza, and that he brought back to Troyes. So that's what he's writing. But he got it from this Gemara, from that Gemara. These are the building blocks, Gemaras, that formulated Rashi's view. And now we'll see the next part. And this is Mark's question from earlier. Sorry, I outed you accidentally, but it was a great question about the shofar of Avoda Zara. Okay, let's do this. Yati Ravina v'kamer la lahashmaita. So Rava was sitting and he was learning this piece. Ravina lives later than Rava. Rava's like third generation. Ravina's already at the end, fifth generation after in terms of the Amoraim. So he's learning it. Eitve Rav Rechume Ravina. So Rav Rechume started peppering Ravina with questions. What did he ask him? Shofar shel avodat kochavim lo yitkabo. A shofar of avodat kochavim you should not use. Shouldn't use for the mitzvah on Rosh Hashanah. That's the reason why. Avodah Zara. Yeah? Okay? Yeah? Okay. But, I don't know why everything shifted here. I don't know how I did this. Let me erase this. We don't do this right now. Where am I? Here. Okay. My love im takalo yatsa. Doesn't that mean to tell us that if a person was to blow the shofar, they would not be yotze? Answered Ravina to Rav Rechume, lo. Im taka yatsa. If he did blow the shofar, he would be yotze. Why? Rashi, lo. Im taka yatsa. Why? Lulav hanahi ulechatchila mia lo yitka mishum demais. Where did Rashi on page 89a in Chulin get this idea again, mishum demais? From the Gemara in Zara and 47a. You see the whole thing's, it's all connected, yeah? So I'm trying to open this up a little bit to see it. So Ravina told him, no, mitzvah lav lehana didn't know, so that you can do it. So then he didn't stop there. He asked him the next question. Lulav shel avodat kochavim lo yitol. The lulav of Avoda Zara should not be taken. My love imnata lo yatsa. Isn't it true, therefore, if you did take it, you wouldn't be yotze? The same answer came, lo imnatal yatsa. If you took it, you would be yotze. Same answer, because mitzvot lav lehanot nitnu, right? So just consider what that means. But that's not the end of the story, because Rav Rechume then said to Ravina, wait a minute, there's a competing breita over here that you're not taking into account. This is going to be a very puzzling Gemara when we're finished. You're going to have, there'll be a lot of furrowed brows over here. L'hatanya taka lo yatsa, natal lo yatsa. We have a breita, give me a second, Larry. We have a breita that specifically says, if you blew a shofar of Avodah Zara, you are not yotze. If you took a lulav of Avodah Zara, you are not yotze. So this is a nice argument you made over here, Ravina, based on the teaching of Rava. It's very nice. You were learning it and you thought it would work. But I have a breita. I don't know why I can't highlight this, but you see that it's over here. Yes, everyone sees this? It's this line. Okay, now I got it. Yeah? But you see, notwithstanding that Rava said that, Rav Rechume said, okay, but I have a breita that sort of overtakes what you're trying to say, because actually it teaches lo yatsa and not the lo yatsa. But what did Rav Ashi do? Rav Ashi and Ravina from the Masaime HaTalmud. Rav Ashi living the same time as Ravina. What does he say? He saves the day. Says to Rav Rechumi, wait a second. Amar Rav Ashi, Hachi Hashta? This is not, these two things are comparable? How could you compare the two things, the two cases? How could you compare the cases here involving these objects where you're not biyotze versus the story of the Kisui Hadam where you would be yotze? Hatam Shiura, wrong way. Oh, Shiura Ba'inan. All right, over there for Lulav, for Shofar, those two objects, you need a shear. The shear for the Lulav, we're going to see Dalet Tfachim. The shear for the Shofar has to be so that when you hold it in your hand, there's at least a little bit sticking out on either side. And you don't have that here. Shiura Ba'inan. Here, Shiura Ba'inan, Rashi says, B'Shofar, Kedei Shiachzenu B'Yado, V'yir Lekanu Lekan, Kidamrin Rosh Hashanah. Lulav, Mefarish Masachat Sukka, Shir Hadas V'Arav Shloshet Tfachim, V'Lulav Arba. Yeah. Avoda Kochavim, Kaven to the Sreifa Kaima, since Avodat Kochavim is slated to be burned, anything that's slated to be burned, it's like it's already burned. Hilkach, Shiurahu the Katute Mechtat. Its size was Kitute Mechtat, cut down, cut away. Aval Hacha, but in our case, the case of the dirt being used for Kisui Adam, Kama de Sarif Umichtat, Mail Kisuye. The more you pulverize the dirt, the better it is to use for Kisui Adam. That's all you need it for. Umishum hana leka the mitzvah lav lehana nidnu. And you can't argue that you're getting hana from the use of that earth because mitzvah lav lehana nidnu. So hatam over there in the other case shiura be'inan v'avoda kochavim kitute mechtat shiura. Hacha in our case, the case in question on 89a of the Kisui Hadam using the afar of the Irani Dachat. The more you pulverize it, the better off it is. Larry, go ahead. I'm sorry, you're waiting patiently. Just unmute yourself because I can't hear you. Oh, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Hardly. Go ahead. Try.
The fact that it's na'us means that with the avid you could use it. It's not nice.
Yes.
That's, okay, thank you.
Yes.
That's
That was
all.
it? That's it. Okay, clarification. Okay, fine. Good. Okay. So now, if you look at Rashi here, I skipped this Rashi before, here on 89a, Rashi had pointed out that when Rava spoke and said this signature line that I made a big deal out of, it was really in a certain way to disagree with Zeire. Virava Amar, Afila ba'afar afara nami mutar, shekisui hadam mitzvah v'lo hana'a. It's not as Zeiri explained that afar arami means the hard-packed earth. It is automatically mutter to use, since you would also have to dig it up before you would pile it up, before you would burn it. Therefore, it's not subject to the Isser Hana. Rava says, no, it's mutter, even though it is Asr B'Hana as well. And that's because Kisui Adam is a mitzvah, and it's not for your personal pleasure. And here's the point: Shah mitzvah shenitnu liYisrael lo lihenu nitnu lahem lo l'shem hana nitnu lahem ela gzerat melachi alehem. Right? This is again and again. It's the same, the same thing again and again. That our relationship with Hashem is not a eudaimonistic one. It is not propelled by the pleasure principle. Commitment, yes. Servitude, yes. A pleasure principle, not an animating feature. It turns out there's a very important silver lining to that, which is things that are asr behana, you're not getting hana from that. We had this case where Rabbi Sprung quoted it from the pulpit in the Divrei Halacha, the 1 minute daily halacha, the other day. He said it with a smile. He says, I always like to describe this. The guy who's laning the Megillah had a fight with a guy sitting in the audience, and the guy in the audience said to him before Megillah reading, I will never get any hana from you. I refuse. But then both two of them come into shul, and the guy he just said, I refuse to have any hana from you, and he made an oath. He's mudar b'hana. That guy got up to lane the Megillah. So what does the Shulchan Aruch say? You're yotze. Why? Because mitzvah lav lehanot nitnu. and the fellow reading is not benefiting the other guy directly. He's reading because he's doing a mitzvah. And the other guy, he has to perform his mitzvah. He didn't get a personal enjoyment. So he brought it up in that context. Not applicable exactly here, but it's related. Okay. So let me pause for station identification. Let's see who's still alive and who's already we've lost. Are you still with me? Should we go to the next phase of this? Yes? Maybe?
Rabbi, didn't we, Rabbi?
Ira first, and then Ronnie's giving thumbs up. Ira, go.
No, didn't we had a case recently with by chauffeur. If the chauffeur was stolen and someone blew the chauffeur, then the issue was whether or not the kahal would be yotze from a stolen chauffeur.
Right. I remember we said in the end, oddly enough, you cannot steal a sound.
Right.
Now, it's disgusting what the person did after, deal with all that.
But you can't steal the sound.
You're touching on a principle over here, a principle we talked about previously, remember?
Right.
We're in the ballpark of this principle, right? Whatever happened to mitzvah haba ba'avera?
Avera.
We won't touch that tonight. That's when we get to the Rambam and the Maggid Mishnah. We won't get that far, but just that is obviously should be somewhere in the room, no?
Yes.
No one's mentioned mitzvah ba'avera so far.
No one. That's my
Right.
question.
Okay, we'll have to get there. We're not up to it yet. What I want to show you next in the slide over here.
So can what case then is the Breita talking about on the last line of the page where it says lo yatsa? What case is that?
Down here,
Yes.
a shofar of Avoda Zara, a lulav of Avoda Zara. Why?
Where the
Why?
shofar and the lulav are actually the objects being worshipped? Is that the thing? Or
I didn't specify deliberately because there's actually some ambiguity there. Let's say the case is in either case, as long as it's slated to be destroyed, if that is it's the psak, so it has to be that it is the object that was worshipped. So that's Mark's case. The ram with a horn attached to it, and then people are bowing down lo aleinu to the ram. Right? Then someone cut off the shofar. Oh, it's making good shofar. So it's not that it's no good. It's not that it's passable because mitzvot lav lehanot nitnu. It's that this object does not, from a halachic vantage point, exist.
oh, got it. Okay.
Now,
So a
let's
case
apply-
like maybe a Jew worshipped it, so it can never be. It has to be
It's indelible, right? It's indelible, and it was the object of worship. By the way, if a non-Jew worshipped it, but they never did bittul on it, it's still an object of Avodah Zara.
Yeah,
right?
but it's not. But
And then
it's
if you
not.
bought
sla-
it,
but,
you bought an object of Avodah Zara, so now it's stuck. You're stuck.
okay, but it's not slated to be destroyed because the non-Jew can be mevatel it.
As long as the non-Jew is not mevatel it is slated to be destroyed if it was an object that was actually worshipped. However, go back to our Gemara 31b, Gemara Sukka. Now we have new insight into why Rava, according to Rashi, was telling us that what is the Lulav Shel Avoda Zara? It was one of two things, but not the third thing. It was either used to beautify the Avodah Zara, or number two, used in the service of the Avodah Zara, but not number three, which was what? Where you worship the object itself. So gesund. Had you worshiped the object of the lulav itself, then we're back to the Gemara in Chulin, page 89a to 89b. Kitute mechtat shiure, it has no standing. There's no shear. It's gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Got
not
it.
different than the Asherah de Moshe, right? It's an
Got it.
object that in and of itself, it's the object that is worshipped and therefore needs to be destroyed. And there is an exit hatch over there, not for the Asherah de Moshe, probably. Actually, not for the Asherah de Moshe, but yes, for an object of Avodah Zarah in general, and that is bittul. Bittul is where the non-Jew does something to signify they've broken a piece and they've broken, therefore, with the Avodah Zarah. If you look at Rashi on page 31b, you'll see that Rashi defines the Asherah de Moshe, what the problem is and why it's called, and it's to Jeff's point from before. Rashi writes, Dibur HaMatchil be'Asherah de Moshe, Otam shayu b'shat kibush Eretz Yisrael, They're the ones that were there at the time that Eretz Yisrael was captured. Does everyone have that Rashi? It's Rashi on 31b in Sukka. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines up from the bottom. Second word in Rashi, inside of the page. Yeah, Basher the Moshe. Where the Torah necessitated, commanded, have to be destroyed by burning. It says in Parsha Re'eh, Sefer Dvarim, Perek Yud Bet, Va'ashe Rehem Tisrafun Ba'esh. V'lulav tzarashir. A lulav needs a certain height. V'hai kiman de michtat shiure kevin delisrefa kai. But this one, it's as if its size has been nullified. It does not exist. It is a 0 because it's slated to be burned. Where did Rashi come up with this definition? Why did he have to tell us all this? Well, he looked in the Gemara in Chulin on page Peitet Amud Aleph Peitet Amud Bet and understood it from there. They're all these sections are all connected one to the other. Yeah. Okay. Let me give away the store and tell you what the basic halacha is based on the Shulchan Aruch, which is actually quite surprising. Here's the Shulchan Aruch, Mr. Brewer. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Larry, first.
A horn attached to the ram is not a shofar.
What?
A horn attached to a ram is not a shofar.
You're saying it needs to be changed, transformed.
It needs to be transformed.
Good.
A hole in it, that's one. And a lulav, a branch of a tamar, is not a lulav as long as it's mechubar. But simply is the Gemara just saying that by virtue of it having been connected to a body,
that is Avoda Zara, it retains its status as Avoda Zara. Yes.
Even though it's talush.
Yeah. That's a chiddush, right? Because we said with regard to, and by the way, this is what distinguishes it, even, again, without even going down the road of mitzvah baba avera, but at least we have a better understanding of like, what is a taint on an object, and right? With stolen objects, the question is that the taint of the stolen nature of it could be washed away through the transfer of ownership to the new person. Ill-gotten gains, no doubt, and in the ledger of sins, there's a big black mark, but on the ledger of mitzvahs, there's an object he acquired. And with regard to Avodah Zarah, it's not that way. The status is not changed through transformation. It retains its inherent status of Avodah Zarah until such time as it is mevutal. Who can be mevatal it? The goy. How? The goy who made it Avodah Zarah can nullify the Avodah Zarah status. But the halacha teaches that a Jew, as far as we know, cannot be mevatal Avodah Zarah. Okay. Shulchan Aruch. You never thought you'd find it in Shulchan Aruch. Hilchot Lulav Siman Taf Reish Mem Tet. Quoting directly from our Mishnah. There's a little Zion here, superscript. You can see it, tiny little character. Mishnah, Chav Tet, Lamed Bet, Lamed Gimel, Lamed Dav. Different places, the Mishnayos. But it's our Mishnah too. V'chein Shel Ir Hani Dachat. V'Shel Asherah. Shel Yisrael Pasul. If it belongs to a Jew, that's all, or excuse me, if it is of Ir Hani Dachat, 1, 2, Shel Asherah, or if it is Avodah Zara, it's like missing the word Avodah Zara, of a Jew, then it's pasul. Aval, Shel Avodat Kochavim, if it is something that belongs to an idolater, well, I butchered the reading of this. Let me try one more time. V'chein Shel Ir Hani Dachat, comma, V'shel Asherah Shel Yisrael pasul. Sorry. Aval Shel Avodat Kochavim, L'chatchila lo yitol, V'im natal yatsa miyom rishon ve'elach d'lo ba'inan lachem. It's very strange. The Shulchan Aruch paskins that if you find a lulav, an Ir Hani Dachat, you cannot use it. If it's of an Asherah tree, then it depends. If it's an Asherah tree of a Jew, that's pasul. You could never use it. However, if it's an Asherah tree of an idolater, l'chadchila, don't take it. But if you took it, you could be yotzei after the first day because you don't need lachem anymore. Very puzzling. Very puzzling. We'll see Mishnah Berurah in a minute. Haggah, the Rama adds with regard to this last statement of the Mechaber, v'davke shlo nitkavin lezakot bo. It has to be specifically you didn't have an intention to acquire it as yours when you picked it up. Aval im nitkaven lezakot bo, havale shel Yisrael, then a yotze bo. Yeah, you picked it up.
Yeah.
It's yours now. You can't be mevatlet because you own it now. Now it's a Jew's idolatry. Didn't change its status. That's not allowed. Ronnie, you have a question? Ronnie, do you have a question? You have enough? Oh, no, I thought you went like that. Okay. So vidavka kodem shnit batel. All of this is davka before there was bittul that was done on this lulav. But if the non-Jew already nullified it, then even if you had intention after the non-Jew was mevatel it and you picked it up to use it, you would be yotze at least b'diavad.
Well, why wouldn't you be yotze even lechatchila once he was mevatel it?
Taka, good question. You tell me. Gemara in Masechet Avoda Zara Daf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph, quoted by Rashi in several places. The mice lagavoa. It's not nice. And if you look at Rava's statement 31b, what did Rava say to us? Rava said, "Lulav shel Avoda Zara lo yitol, don't take it. V'im natal kasher." Rashi read that as meaning a lulav that is right now having been used 5 seconds ago by the non-Jew to sweep up in front of their Avodah Zara, or was used to wave in front of the Avodah Zara, and you say, "Can I buy it off you? How much is it? $5, a steal. I'll take it." You take it, and you decide you're going to use it. What does Rava say according to Rashi? Well, mitzvah lav lehanat nitnu. So lulav Avodah Zara, you shouldn't take it. Not nice, but if you did it, you're yotze. Rama writes, Rama lives after, obviously. Rama is saying, no. This is all that we just talked about before is really the cases before bittul. But if it was already nidbatel, aval im bit nidbatel biyad kuti, so even if you had kavana when you picked it up to take it to yourself afterward, you would at least be the biyotze. Why only be the avid? Because still the mice problem. Still gross. Still disgusting. Look what the Mr. Brewer does. He fills in the blanks for us.
So the bittul doesn't entirely rid it of its status.
Based what the Ramah says, no. What the Ramah says, no. But there may be others who would disagree. We're going to see some other opinions. But to the Ramah, no, it doesn't fully rid it. The Ramah based in Rabbeinu Yerucham. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I mean, there are different opinions, different approaches. Psak follows generally this way. We're not going to see this now, but when you look this up, this is about the shofar case. Look at these examples. Shel Yerni Dachat, Mishnah Berurah gives us the background. We know this already. Why? It's slated for destruction, for burning. You need 4 tfachim. Since it's only standing for burning anyway, ain't shiura kayam. It's like it's already burned. Doesn't exist. Therefore, it's possible even on the second day. It's possible at any time. It doesn't exist. Mishel Ashera, explanation, Hu Ilan She'ovdin Oto. It is being worshipped. V'im Nat'o, if they planted it, Ulvasof Avado, and in the end, V'im Nat'u, Ulvasof Avdu. Or I think Nata'o. At first they planted it, Ulasof Avado, then they worshipped it later. Az haperot shegadli kodim havoda mutarim lahedjut vasurim lechatchila legavoa demais. Then any of the fruits, says the Mishnah Berurah, that grew before it was worshipped, grew status neutral. So now they're mutter for a general purpose. However, they'd still be lechatchila forbidden to be used for mitzvahs. It's disgusting. It's repugnant. V'otan haperot shegidlu achas shenavad. Asr af lahedjad bahana k'di'ida b'yoredea sim kuf mem hey upasla b'yom sheni, and any of the fruits that grew after or branches that grew after it started to be worshipped, those would be considered asr even lahedjad. That's based on the halacha in Yoredea.
I don't understand why a distinction is made about when the fruit grew, as long as the fruit is mechubar to the tree that was used for Avodah Zara.
You're 100% right. This is the debate. Rabbanan say, as long as it's attached to the ground, it's Teflon. And Rav Isi Bar Yehuda says, not that way. He says, no, there is a taint to it. It's a 3-way machloket there in the in Memhei Amid Av, I don't remember. There's a 3 machloket there about the level of taint. And one of the opinions is it's whatever grows after its status changed. That's the one that apparently the Shulchan Aruch picked up and say that's the halacha. Again, we're not learning that sugya. If we were, we could parse that issue. It's sort of ancillary now for our discussion. But the Gemara, the Mishnah Berurah here continues. Shel, you saw a puzzle. The kaven she'ein bittul ha'akum mo'ila lahatira b'hana harei omedet l'sreifa. There's no bittul of an akum because it belongs to a Jew. So it's going to be burned no matter what. There's no way to fix it. As I said before. Now, here's our case. If it's right, l'chadchila lo yitol, afilu im bitla, it says chaf aleph goes on this. Aval shalav rechuim l'chadchila lo yitol, v'im nato yatzim yom echad ve'elach, d'lo be'in lachem. So what does it say here? L'chadchila lo yitol, afilu im bitla akum, d'shari lahedjot, legavoa aser demais, but you still shouldn't use it for mitzvahs because it's really repulsive. V'im nato, if you took it anyway, you're yotze. Vein tzarich lachzer v'litol. Yeah. Va'afilu im lo bitlan ha'akum. Now this is a big chiddush. If I had another color, I would highlight this in some other color, but I'm not so fancy. And even, says the Mishnah Berurah, even if it turned out that the akum, that the goy did not nullify it at all, it's still an object of Avoda Zara. V'harei asura dain b'achilu v'hana. Mikol makam kevin demoyel la bitul hatira b'hana. Harei eina umedet l'sreifa. She'afshar shivatlena ha'akum. Because it's still possible that the non-Jew may be mevatel it. Uma shenoto latzeit ba, and the fact that you're picking it up to be yotze with it, eina chashuva hana. The mitzvot lav lehanot nitnu v'kanizkar le'el. Now, when is that true? Only on days when you can pick up a lulav and it doesn't properly have to belong to you. Remember, the mitzvah of lachem is only the first day. Mr. Berurah explains that the next sentence. De lo ba'inan lachem aval b'yom rishon de ba'inan lachem eno yotze ba afilu b'diavad kol zman shlo bitla ha'akum de asura behana v'lo mikre lachem. It is forbidden in hana, and it is also not called yours. It still belongs to the non-Jew. If you acquire it, that's very bad because then it's an object of Avoda Zara, can never be mevutal. So you're not going to acquire it. You're just going to pick up the non-Jews thing, be yotze with the mitzvah. No, that's impossible because it's still an object of Avoda Zara, and it needs to be yours. You need to own it on the first day. Yeah. Now, here's by the way, va'ayin le'el. Simon Tavkuf Pevav, says the Mishnah Berurah, wrote Salomar Desham Hevi Ramah, the Yesh Machmirin Afilu B'Shel Akum, Shalolatzel Afilu B'Diavad Kodem Shnit Batel, Ulinyandina Ayin Le'el B'Simon Tavkuf Pevav, Sifkat and Yudchat. Mishnah Berurah gives you yet more. Yeah. What do we see just now? That actually some of the issues we're talking about are actually being parsed as far down in the Shulchan Aruch. Some case yes, some case no. Depends what the level of taint there is that may or may not be correctable some way. You could fix it by removing its taint owing to the world, or owing to the declaration of bittul. And even in a case sometimes where there isn't going to be bittul yet, but as long as it's not the first day where you don't actually properly have to own it, you could use, according to like a b'diavad, at least in this point of the Shulchan Aruch, you could b'diavad, take the lulav of the non-Jew, not on the first day, not actually acquire it, use it for your mitzvah. Why? Mitzvah lav lehana nitnu. You're not getting hana, and that's it. I mean, this is a very strange idea, right? If you think about the implications, I think we can all agree to that. This is sort of a strange way of thinking about these mitzvahs. Nobody so far, by the way, has invoked the idea of mitzvah of avera, which is in and of itself a strange thing. But just think about the reality there, that It doesn't seem to be in the room. Mitzvah baba avera seems to be related only to the world of bein adam lachavero as the taint, not bein adam lamakom. Strange but true. If you look at this page, this is the one about the shofar. We don't have time to see it inside, but if you want to look it up, Tavkuf Peivav Sif Gimel. If you were Tokeh and Shov Avoda Kochavim of a Jew, you're not Yotzei. She'ena Betela Olamid, it can never be canceled. V'kitute Machtat Shiurei. Aval B'Shel Avodat Kochavim. But if it belonged to a non-Jew, Shel Ovid Kochavim, of Echein B'Misham She'avodat Kochavim, Shel Ovid Kochavim, right? If it was an object of idolatry that belonged to an idolater, or that was serves the idol, which belonged to an idolater, lo yitka, don't use it. But if you did, yatsa. V'hish lo nitkavin lezakot bo. But not that you acquired the shofar. You acquired the shofar. What happens to the shofar size? Boom, gone. Then it belongs to you, and if it belongs to you, it's out. Remember, that's what we keep saying. If it belongs,
has no shear.
Has no shear anymore. Has no shear. Then it's like it doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, then there's, I don't have a shofar. It doesn't exist. So, right? So you're sort of someone threading the needle. The end of the Ramah adds here, V'yesh machmirin, da'afilu b'shel v'dor kachavim eno yotzei. Aval benit batel be'erev yantif, right? The Ella, but if before Yantif it was Nit Batel, maybe then you could acquire it. But generally, we maintain that we're not going to accept the use of it. Yeah. Okay. Here, the shofar shli krod avodah kachavim was actually used. Is used as an animal. This is Mark. If you're still here, I think you're still here. Yeah. This is what was. You had touched on it. So once we're here, I'll just say it. The shofar of Tikrovet Avodat Kochavim. The shofar came off the animal that was used for Avodah Zara. It was going to be offered as an offering. Afilu haya oved kochavim shetakabo lo yatsa mishum de'ena betela olamit. It can never be canceled. It retains its taint. The Mishnah Berurah points this out. Tikrovet Avodah Zara perush behema shikrivu lekorban lifnei Avodah Zara basau mekarnei shofar. They cut off the horns. They took the animal and offered it as a sacrifice. Now I want to use this as shofar. It's not exactly what you asked, but it's in the family. Yeah, it's not. You can never cancel it out because part of it was offered already, and the rest of it now that taint is indelible. Anyway, okay. So tonight we saw the Gemara in Sukka Lamed Aleph and Bet. We read it again. We looked at Rashi there. We saw the building blocks of how Rashi got to his understanding. The Gemara in Avodah Zara, Mem Zayin Amud Aleph, the Gemara in Chulin, Pei Tet Amud Aleph. And then we looked at Rashi, we talked at Tosfot, Mem Zayin Amud Aleph, and then we saw Rashi in both of these other Gemaras, how they inform the Gemara here, what we understand. And then we saw in the Shulchan Aruch with the Mishnah Berurah, it's just a great compendium of different approaches, sort of giving you the bottom line, practically, but what we're up to. What we didn't see tonight, which we'll see next time, we'll open next time, we'll talk about the Ritva. We'll see the Shita of the Rambam, very strange, an interesting Shita as usual with the Rambam. And from there, hopefully we'll climb the mountain of Tosfot, where we essentially learn the basic building blocks that we will need. Most of the building blocks that we will need is one piece left, which maybe I'll skip. We'll just read it in the Tosfot in order to be able to figure out what's going on in this sugya. And then we'll pull up stakes and we'll move to the next Gemara. Okay, Ad Kan for tonight.